enjoying the running and using each race as kind of like my all-out redlining moments. I don't go to the well in practice like ever. So races are a really fun way for me to be like, okay, if I blow up, it's because I am using this as, you know, a point in time where I'm like fully testing my limits, and I'm not scared to fail anymore. And I think it's really hard to get to that point, but you have to be vulnerable and you have to kind of like relinquish control. It's been fun to figure out how to get to this point, and you know, we're still testing ourselves each time we line up, but that's the fun of it.
That was Jess McClain today on the Running Effect podcast. This conversation today was absolutely excellent. I'll try to keep this intro short so that you guys can dive into the wisdom of Jess. But yeah, Jess brings years and years and years of experience and a wealth of knowledge and wisdom. If I'm not mistaken, she was a 14-time state champion. Absolutely remarkable. She qualified for the Foot Locker cross-country national meet all 4 years in high school. She then went on to Stanford, where she was a 7-time All-American, had a successful professional running career, but then stepped back and then entered back into it and placed 4th at the U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials last February in Orlando, Florida. Sorry, my mind blanked there for a second. Wild performance there, 4th place Olympic alternate. Since then, Jess has signed a professional running contract with Brooks. She's raced a 5K indoors. She's been crushing it on all fronts. Today's conversation, I just dive into Jess's head, get wisdom from her, hear about all the things she's thinking, dreaming, planning, all that fun stuff. If you enjoy this one, which I am so confident you will, share the podcast with a friend. Help us to grow and expand the show and our mission. And then the cherry on top, hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss another episode, and give us a 5-star review. With all of those notes aside, I hope you all enjoy this conversation with the one and only Jess McClain. Jessica McClain, welcome back to the Running Effect podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm great, Dominic. Thanks for having me. And it was so good to finally meet IRL in Boston.
I know. You ran a quick 5K. What was that experience like for you? Just diving right in.
Yeah, it was great. I hadn't been on the indoor track in almost exactly 5 years. My last indoor race was the 5K at BU. I think it was the Valentine race, though. And that was 2020, right before the world shut down. So that was my last indoor stint. And so there was some pent up like curiosity and nerves around that. I definitely felt like a baby giraffe the first mile. Like I had no idea what I was doing. And then it's so funny. It's like getting back on a bike. Like you just kind of remember, and the track felt super good and super fast. And it was really nice to just kind of lock in and ride the wave. And yeah, it was good. I can't complain with a PR. I definitely wanted a little closer to 15 flat, but no, I'm happy with 15:09. We'll take it.
Those who don't know, no one would know except me. When we hopped on this call, you were on a work call, and bringing that up, we talked about this in the first conversation. Like, you are a full-on dipping your toes in so many different avenues in life, and I respect that and look up to that in you so much, because I think a lot of people in the sport of running like limit themselves to just the grind of the doubles and the Normatechs, and sure, there's a time and a place for that, but it is cool to see you wanting to have larger impact. And I know that's the type of person you are. We probably covered this in the first conversation, but just like, how do you do it all? Genuinely curious. And like, how do you manage stress and all of that? Because I imagine it can get crazy.
Yeah, I can. And it's so funny, after we met, and for those listening, my husband Connor was in tow, and he was talking to you, and he's like, dang, Dominic is like a freaking grinder. Like, you're doing all the things too. So I feel like, you know, you've got a great grasp on handling all the things and balancing life and work and everything. But yeah, I think it took a while to get to the point where I had it figured out, where I, you know, dedicated the right amount to running and recovery and all the things I needed to do. But there was a big chunk of life outside of the sport where I just felt like things were missing for a while, in terms of, you know, a professional career and investing in my family and friends and other fun things. So it took like, after the pandemic, a few years to figure that out. And then honestly, once I got back into the professional side of running, it kind of took care of it, because I do remember like how hard you have to train and how big of a commitment it is to run at this level. But I think the part where I got in trouble was like all the times outside of practice and racing where you're just sitting idle, and you're kind of just, as you said, like, some people are totally fine with that and they love it, and I honestly envy them, but my brain just can't not do anything. So yeah, it just was a slow trickle of like doing some consulting marketing work and putting my degree to use. And then I felt like I could handle more. So then I took on, a part-time marketing gig right before the pandemic. And then that felt like the right amount. And then once COVID hit, I was like, all right, running's on the back burner. Let's just go all in on this marketing career. And that was great. And then I realized I gave corporate a try for 2 years and I realized I'm not a corporate girl. It was not for me. So it's a lot of testing and just figuring it out. But once you get to the point where you figure out your recipe for success, it's just very like routine. Like, you know, what's going to work and what might be pushing the boundaries a little bit too much.
If I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong here, for the sake of giving him his flowers. Connor runs or owns some sort of construction company, right? Something of the sort?
Yeah. He started a subcontracting business specializing in drywall and interior finishes, which means like acoustical ceilings. Like if you're in a restaurant and you notice there's like specialty interiors making it a little bit quieter, or like specialty paint jobs, things like that. It's very niche, but he started that it'll be 2 years in May. So he's been in the thick of like the life grind, which honestly, like I looked up to a lot and I'm like, wow, if he can do that, like I can figure out how to like balance a nonprofit job and running. Like it can't be that hard. But yeah, so he's doing that.
Yeah, the reason I bring that up is because my question was going to be how entertaining, not just entertaining, like what are the dinner table conversations like where you guys, and I bring that up because like I wanted to give him his flowers. It's an impressive job. He's doing his own thing. When you run your own thing, and I know this in my world, like there's so many more unique stories than if you just like had a normal 9 to 5. What are dinner time conversations like at the McClains?
Well, it's like a good night if we actually sit at the dinner table. Like we usually just TV dinner it on the couch, which is like so bad, but we just get to the point where we're like, oh my gosh, I love to cook. So I'll put a big effort into cooking. And then sometimes if it's a nicer dinner, we'll sit at the table or we have like a little bar countertop thing. But usually it's sitting on the couch with our dog staring at us from a distance. Yeah, I think it varies. Like there's definitely, and you know this, like there's high highs and low lows with starting a new business. And for the first year, it was definitely more lows than highs. And now it's like, how was your day? And it's a little bit, the report is a little bit less hectic and a little bit less like, you know, customer frustration centric. Now it's like, okay, now we're problem solving like in the ways that he enjoys. But yeah, no, dinner's nice. We're really tired all the time, but it's our favorite time of the day. We usually have dinner, cook dinner, and then depending on the time of year, we'll walk the dog before or after, and then we are in bed very early. So we get like a solid 2 or 3 hours together after work, and then we get up and do it again. But it's the life we chose, and it's the life we like, so it's all good.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. In regards to going back a little bit to you talking about, you know, balancing a career with the full-time professional running thing.
mm-hmm.
Do you think that Stanford at all in your time at Stanford formed you into that individual, like where you want to do greater things, you want to do more things than just like limiting yourself in the sport? Or do you feel like the Jess before Stanford, if I talked to her, she would have shown some of these qualities where you could have guessed this?
I think a little bit of both. I've always been kind of like wound this way. And my dad has always had multiple things going on at once since I was little. Like he's an entrepreneur. He's started businesses. He's invested in businesses. He's bought businesses and like turned them around. And I was kind of exposed to that. And he was gone Monday through Friday traveling when I was younger. So I wasn't like, wasn't a secret that he worked really hard and balanced all these things. And my mom worked too. She was in the nonprofit sector, which is very funny because I ended up in that. So yeah, I was exposed to that fairly young. And I think the work ethic was always ingrained in me. But Stanford is like such an interesting place. I felt like I belonged. Like I didn't fully have imposter syndrome. Like I earned my way there and I loved it. And I found, my groove and like my track. Like marketing is not, business school, and it's not, the med school track. It's pretty manageable. So I think, once I was confident in my path and my journey, it was all good. But you're surrounded by literal geniuses at Stanford. Like you have kids that are prodigies. You have kids that have, found out how to support themselves and left their home country, and they moved to, Stanford was their first time in the US, and they were just like full send on the Ivy League school in the States and made it work. So yeah, it was just a very unique, amazing experience to be exposed to different people and different views. And I think that it just made me, I don't know, I think it just made me a better whole rounded person. But yeah, it was hard. I mean, everybody on the team, we were there because we obviously were good at running and good at school. But I think it actually got harder once you realized you wanted to invest more in the athletic side of things, because you are at Stanford and it's such a highly renowned academic school. But you kind of figure that out. Like my senior year, I realized like, oh my gosh, I could maybe do this after college. And I felt okay, doing what I needed to do to perform well in the classroom, but I was okay investing more in my athletics, like towards the end of my career. So you just figure it out. You lean on the right people and you have awesome teammates to look up to. And I was lucky in that regard for sure.
You mentioned the words imposter syndrome in relation to your time at Stanford. I'm curious, diving into kind of more present subjects, and we can go back to your race at the Olympic trials in a minute. Did you or do you feel imposter syndrome at all in the sport of running, knowing that your journey and path is a little bit different than other people? And if so, how have you tried to overcome it?
I definitely, I don't know if it was imposter syndrome. I think I got in my own way a lot. I don't know if it was that I didn't feel like I belonged. I just don't think I let myself get to the point where I was fully enjoying the sport and I was healthy enough to like reach and tap into my full potential. Now I would say I have zero imposter syndrome. I'm like, my path to get here was my path, and I relinquished like all heavy expectations of what I thought a career should look like at this level, leading into the marathon trials. And it honestly like ended up working really well. Now, can I do that for every race at this level now? Like, no, like every race comes with different pressure. And I didn't want it to feel like, oh, Jess was a, one trick pony and it was a fluke and it was a lucky day. I honestly believed like, okay, no, there's more in the tank. So no, I would say I don't have imposter syndrome now. I think it's just more of perspective and like, how are we going to feel like we've had a fulfilled career and this is a fulfilling path that I'm on. And a lot of that is like not playing the comparison game and not falling into the trap of like, oh, I should be hitting this time or getting top 3 here or winning this race. It's like, no, just go in. Every race kind of has a different purpose. And I think that's really fun. Like my goal is Boston in April. And do I want to make the world team this weekend in Atlanta? Like, of course I do. But, it's a lot of just enjoying the process and not putting so much pressure on the process itself to the point where you get to these races and then you're so mentally and physically spent that you can't even have fun with, showing the world all the hard work that you've put in and what you're capable of. So yeah, long-winded answer is no, I don't feel like I have imposter syndrome now. Can I give you like a how-to guide on how I got here? No, which is also frustrating, but it just comes with time and like getting the confidence that you need in your journey and being surrounded by the right people and finding out your why, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you learn and evolve. And something that I think is very freeing to do and to state is like, it's our first time living life and no one really knows what they're doing. And you you do what you want with the cards you have. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite quotes and favorite perspectives, because even with like people in my life that I love so deeply and dearly, like my parents, or like you have to like it. I remember there was one point like this year where I heard a quote like, oh, it's your mom's first time living too. And I'm like, oh my God, like you forget that. Like, everybody's just trying to figure it out. And empathy is such an important thing. And it's like, you don't know what's going on in someone else's life. And there's another quote I saw where it's like, you don't know why the person in front of you is driving slow. They could have a toddler in the back seat, or they could have a cake for their, loved one's birthday that they're trying not to topple over. Or it's just like, everybody's figuring it out. Like, and give yourself grace too. Like I'm figuring it out as I go. So I have to remind myself of that too.
How exciting is it for you that like round 2 of the running journey, the running career is just, it's going pretty darn well. Maybe there are things you would change or want to be better, but even, and we can get into the 5K. I know I asked you a little bit about it.
Yeah.
That's so dang impressive for a marathoner. Like I know you maybe don't fully consider yourself a marathoner, but I feel like throughout my history of following the sport of running, you would never see marathoners touch that distance. And when you did, it would be like they'd be in super shoes, outdoor track. You're like, nope, I'm going to throw on the Brooks spikes, head to the fastest indoor track in the world and like get after it. And like you were hanging with some fast people and you just seem to have like a fun, energetic joy about the sport. And I think that's a big reason why you're successful, at least from the outside.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, I think I see races now. Like I honestly frame races as like vacation. I'm like, okay, I get to go and just focus on running for 2 or 3 days, which to me, it's such a fun way to look at it. You know, my job is super supportive and obviously my family is too, but like I look at racing as like me time. I'm like, oh, I get to just go and like hang out with these awesome like meet directors. Like I love going to New York, hanging out with the NYR, like the New York Roadrunner team. I love seeing my fellow competitors. Like I feel like at the marathon level, it's so fun because you're kind of on the circuit with everybody and you see the same people and they really treat you well at these marathons and you hang in the hospitality suite and get to build relationships. And because I represent myself, more so on like the agent side, I don't have an agent. I really wanted to make it, you know, if I was going to do this again, like a point to invest in building those relationships with those kind of people. So I just really look forward to race weekends. Am I nervous? Of course. Like I'm so nervous for this weekend, but it's because I care and I want it to go well. And yeah, I'm just having fun with it. I get to do it. My body is finally at a point where like I know it so well, and that makes me so confident in knowing that I'm the person that understands my body the most, and I am my body's biggest advocate, and I know what it needs now and I know what it can't take, and I just stick up for that, and I don't give on any of those fronts anymore. And I feel like I didn't know my limits in the past, or I did, and I felt like being tough was running through things and not communicating that things were off or hurting. So I've learned a lot, and I don't know how long my shelf life is. So I'm just enjoying like being in this moment of kind of like a momentum flow state of enjoying the running and using each race as kind of like my all out redlining moments. I don't go to the well in practice like ever. So races are a really fun way for me to be like, okay, if I blow up, it's because I am using this as, you know, a point in time where I'm like fully testing my limits, and I'm not scared to fail anymore. And I think it's really hard to get to that point, but you have to be vulnerable and you have to kind of like relinquish control. And it's been fun to figure out how to get to this point. And, you know, we're still testing ourselves each time we line up, but that's the fun of it.
I love it. I love it. They say wisdom comes with age, excuse me.
Yeah.
Age doesn't come with wisdom necessarily. So I want to ask you, so that was the biggest brain fart moment of all time, but sometimes you leave that stuff in there to show the audience it's real. For you, we have probably a majority younger audience, but it's beautiful because they're like serious runners who want to get better. So they soak up the things that someone like you would share. What would be a thing or two that you did in the past 10 years or just like in your running career that you wish you would have avoided now on the other side of it?
Definitely running through any kind of injury. I think even the slightest niggle or the slightest sickness, like that is your body like throwing up caution and warning signs, and that is you just totally driving by them and ignoring them when you shouldn't. Yeah, I think it's so hard to do that though, because you're always riding. We talk about this as athletes all the time. You're like riding that very thin line of like what's on the other side of your comfort zone and that next, you know, like level of fitness. But yeah, I would have told myself, I think my younger self, that yes, we don't need to run through injuries or sicknesses. Trusting myself and my intuition and my gut and my honestly even like my race instincts. I think I I didn't think I had race instincts for the longest time. I had to rely on coaches a lot to give me a race plan. And then if a race didn't go out the way we thought it would, I just, kind of lost all, like, I don't know. It's almost like I didn't know what to do because I had played out certain scenarios in my head and then they didn't unfold that way. So I think it's also like understanding that comes with just racing and more experience, and you're going to keep learning. But yeah, and then my ultimate like cliche advice is always to keep it fun. And like the minute it's not fun, you have to figure out what needs to change or what did change to make it not fun, and figure out how to make it fun and enjoy the process again. I think that was a huge thing for me, is like I just kept running through years of not enjoying it, and that doesn't lead to anything good. So ultimately a lot of good came from taking a step back for a year or two and learning how to just have fun with running again. And that didn't even come from like a perspective of needing to race again. It was just like, okay, how does running be a part of my day and make it better than it would have been if I didn't go out for a run? So yeah, I mean, the list goes on, but I would say those are like my top three.
Obviously, almost a year ago to the day, almost. Well, it was early February, but about a year ago was the U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials in Orlando.
Yeah.
You placed fourth. Probably one of the best days of your life. Remarkable performance, kind of cemented your comeback in the sport of running in this like round two go at it. We talked about it, I'm sure, in our first conversation, as well as you kind of did the podcast tour and went on a bunch of other podcasts. So we won't beat that story again. But more specifically speaking, forward from it, like what's this
Yeah.
past year been like, and how have you handled that just like wild performance, and then maybe not like proving to others, but proving to yourself that like that is the level that I can compete at, and I really am that good. It wasn't the humidity, it wasn't people had an off day. Like Jess McClain is one of the best in the country, and like I'm gonna accept that, and I'm gonna race with that kind of confidence and swagger.
Swagger. I'm always like, gosh, distance, we could have so much more swag. I watch like Sha'Carri and like I watch all the sprinters and I'm like, damn, I just wish I had more swag. Hey, we'll get there. But no, that's a great question. I mean, it meant so much. I honestly went into that race thinking it would be a really good way to like close the chapter on running competitively. And I think with that mindset, it was like I didn't worry what was going to happen beyond that day. I was like, we're going to get there healthy and we're going to have a blast doing it. Obviously, it's a marathon on the biggest stage in the US. So, like, yes, there were nerves and all the stuff that comes with it. But I think it was like a celebration. Like, it just felt like such a fun way to maybe close the chapter. And then when I got there, all of the things that used to make me so nervous and things that just seemed like all the moments in between where I didn't enjoy, I enjoyed all of them, like getting to the meet hotel and seeing people in the lobby and connecting with old coaches and talking through course strategies. Like I was having so much fun with just like nerding out over the sport again. So then when I finished, it was like I was pretty emotional in my post-race interview, and it wasn't because I got fourth. I mean, once I realized how close I was, I think it hit me, but it was more so because like I thought this was going to be the end, and then I was like, oh my god, I had so much fun. Like it was the most fun I've had racing, and it's because I totally trusted myself, and I had amazing friends that helped get me there and trained with me, but like I trusted myself the whole time and did what gave me confidence and listened to my body and didn't push it to its limits. And it went really well. So it kind of just set the tone for 2024. And I worked really hard to like surround myself with the right people. And getting a shoe contract was not a goal from the trials that it just was not something I was thinking would happen. It's not something I thought I needed. And then a lot of signs were just pointing to Brooks. I went to the Hyperion house the day before the trials, and I picked up my free pair of shoes because they were giving them out to, to trials participants. And I was not at the point where I was going to pass up a free pair of super shoes. So I went by the Brooks house, and it was just so fun to be back around old, like Brooks employees that worked there and old teammates and coaches. And yeah, and then after the trials, like Brooks was one of the first to reach out, and it just felt super right. And they met me where I'm at in my life and in my running. And I just thought that was super cool. And then, yeah, I just went into the rest of 2024, like feeling super supported. Did not think I would ever touch the track again. Like, even talking to Brooks, I'm like, do not even, like, track is a non-factor. I'm not even going to race to, like, like run on the indoor or outdoor track for years to come. And then I realized, like, okay, well, it's not fun to just do the things that keep us comfy and like in our comfort zone. Like, it's fun to challenge yourself. And I was like, why not try 10K? And then when I qualified for the outdoor trials, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I was nervous because all of my experiences in Eugene were pretty negative, and I didn't make it to the 2016 starting line in the 5K. I got hurt, and then 2020 COVID hit, and I just did not have it in me to train through 2021. So I just used the trials as like a really good healing, like, hopefully the race goes out fast, and I think I could stick myself in it. It went out slow, and I knew I did not have the 1,500-meter speed at the end to like make it. So I knew we were going to be like racing for fourth place again, which is totally fine. But yeah, it was an awesome year. I think a lot of learnings came out of it. Made me really excited for 2025. Learned about the world stage for, the majors, and we'll take a lot of those lessons into this year. So yeah, it was an awesome year. One I will probably never forget.
At every level of your career, Jess, you've been excellent in high school. And again, I'm sure we covered some of this in our first conversation. You were 14-time state champion, which just when I hear those sort of stats, you were 4-time Foot Locker finalist. Like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I was so washed in high school. I tried so hard and just never quite panned out. But that, and then in college, multiple time All-American. I want to say you were a 7-time All-American. You were a 2-time Pac-12 champion in the 10K. Then obviously went on to have a successful professional running career that you are now continuing. So my question for you would be, you were excellent at every stage. I'm sure anything you do, you just have an attitude of like, I'm going to be excellent within it. So how would you personally define the word excellence, and how are you trying to embody that? And what does that look like in this current stage of your professional running career?
Wow. That's a great question. It's funny though, like I look back on my NCAA career and I feel like I didn't accomplish what I wanted to. Like I think maybe I hit the top 3 once at NCs. Never won a title. The Pac-10 titles were super fun, or Pac-12 rather, and were great and great memories. But like I felt like I didn't accomplish everything I wanted to at the NCAA level or my first stint as a pro. Like I honestly walked away from my first stint as a pro like totally defeated, and like did not feel like it was an excellent pursuit of everything I hoped it would be. But I don't know. I think excellence to me, I'm still working on it, because I used to be so scared of like mediocrity and not meeting my goals and not trying to like achieve perfection. I think excellence to me is like showing up every day and getting a little bit better. You can't like do everything and become everything all at once overnight. And I think excellence is just like, it's committing to yourself and committing to your goals, but it's also celebrating like the little milestones and the little wins along the way. I feel like the trials performance was years of work. Like it wasn't just, oh, we got back into running in 2022 and had a good training year in 2023. Like I have been running, like knowing at this level that I wanted a moment like that for probably 15 years. And I never got it until like this past year. And I think excellence is just not giving up. It's okay to take a step back and take a pause, but like get back on the horse when you're ready and give it another shot. I think we're still working on it's a working definition, but I think that's the answer I would give.
So good. My question off of that arises in my head is like, how did you not give up in those 15 years? And what would you say to someone in the audience who's at that breaking point, literally, where they're like about to throw in the towel or about to stop being so serious because they're not seeing the result, and they're honestly scared that like their work is never going to pan out, that it'll be for nothing?
Yeah. That's a great question because I've been there. I've definitely hit rock bottom like multiple times. I think my lowest point was it was like my last US outdoor championship in the 10K. I was hurt going in. I just wanted to get through the race, ended up finishing, knew I was hurt, same injury that I had likely had multiple times. And then, said I was going to go cool down. And I just like walked over to a set of bleachers, like in the dark, and just sat and cried and just like sat in the misery of knowing that I was at rock bottom and that I needed to like either quit and take a break from this thing or like needed to uproot and change what was happening. So yeah, it's hard because when you're in those moments, like sometimes a step back is like actually a step forward. Like figure out, like you need to figure out how to detach yourself, like your identity from what you're doing. Like at that point, running was all that I was. And so when it wasn't going well, racing, training, whatever it was, like I just felt like a total failure and I had nothing else to tap into that gave me joy or purpose. So it's a lot. It's like lean on the people around you. I got a lot of love, but I got a lot of tough love from, my parents. Like they're like, okay, like you're this amount of years removed with a degree from Stanford and you've been trying this running thing for X years. Like, where do you want this to go and what do you want it to look like? And I think it's okay to be asked hard questions and to like lean on those who force you to kind of look internally and look in the mirror. And yeah, I don't know. My answer is like, you kind of need to reframe giving up too. Like sometimes life is about just reprioritizing things and realizing like, okay, this used to be my passion and maybe it's not anymore and that's okay. But if it is your passion and you know it 100% that you want to give it everything and like really see what happens when you dedicate, a lot to this one journey or path or whatever it is, like figure out how to do that, but like with balance. I think that would be my answer is figure out what other buckets in life you can pour yourself into and dip into when you need to. And it's okay to have multiple buckets. Like you see it now, people are running and starting businesses and they're entrepreneurs or they're having kids and they have a family. And it's so cool. I'm so happy our sport is evolving because I really don't think the only track you can do this is like a part of a team in a certain city where you have practice 5 days a week and it's super structured. Like that works for so many people, but it doesn't work for a handful of us. So it's okay if your path looks different than other people's paths. It's just take the time and the space that you need to figure out what you need. Yeah.
You seem like a big quotes person from the amount that you've brought up in this conversation. And I have two quotes for you, Jess, off of that in relation to those subjects. One of those, and I think this just gives context to a listener, like if you're in the thick of it and having a hard day and struggling with that, the quote is, everything changed for me when I realized that we're not meant to feel excited and perfect all the time. Mm-hmm. I started accepting that where I am right now is genuinely where I'm meant to be. Tough days are all a part of the process. Lean into them. Bad days are also a part of a very good and meaningful life. And then the second quote was, and I love this one probably a little bit more, it's normal to not know what you're doing. If you did, it wouldn't be called growth. High five your fear, uncertainty, and doubt and carry on.
That's a great one. No, it's so true. 100%. The first quote, what was the last part of that first quote?
The last part was bad days are also a part of a very good and meaningful life.
Yeah, like it's so true. I'm kind of at this point in life. Somebody asked me the other day, like, how are you doing? And I'm like, oh my God, honestly, like everything's good. Like knock on wood, my family's healthy and, doing well. And like running is feeling great and work is going well. And, but like, I wouldn't be able to feel this like flow state, happiness that I'm feeling if I didn't have the hard days. And I think, yes, having hard days is totally okay, but you need to meet yourself where you're at. And like, I catch myself, I don't know what happened when I turned 30, but I just feel, I don't know what it says about people who are just very nostalgic, but I just like think back to so many, and maybe it's because I'm living in Arizona and I grew up here and I'm running on the bike paths I used to run on when I was 12 and all this stuff, but I'm just like, oh man, like it is like life is good. But then there's like days where everything goes wrong 100%. Like I feel shitty on my run or my workout goes poorly and I mess up at work. Oh my God, the amount of times I mess up at work. Like I just, and these moments seem so big, like in the moment, but those are growth moments. It's like figure out what went wrong. Don't dwell on it. Like don't put yourself through it twice and like sit in it and relive it over and over and over again. And then when you're in a good moment, like don't stress about what could go wrong. Like I think it's just being super present and enjoying the highs. But then taking the lows, at face value. And it's not, it might not just be a blip. It could be like a stretch of a week that doesn't feel great or a month. And it's like, that is so crappy when you're in it. But yeah, it's like figure out what tools you need in your toolbox to take on those hard times. But they do make the good times and the positive times sweeter. But yeah, it's kind of what life is. It's a big mixed bag.
Such good wisdom. Such good wisdom. Okay, Jess, wrapping up this conversation, let's talk about this weekend. Also, just if I don't know this, I feel like a lot of other people wouldn't know it. So I'm just going to ask, who's your coach? And are you coaching yourself?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I was coaching myself up until New York Marathon. And then I started like planning my, spring 2025. And I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm going to be running a 5K indoors, a half marathon road championship, a 10K outdoors, and a marathon. Like I do not know how to train myself for that at all. And it just kind of happened organically. My husband, Connor, entered a few trail races, and then he started listening to all these podcasts, and like trail super shoes were showing up, and like really specific kinds of gels and all these things from the feed. And I'm like, where is he learning about all this stuff? Like he's not talking to me. And it turns out he was listening to David Roach's podcast, who is very, prominent on the trails and very successful. And we were driving to Coronado Island for Thanksgiving and listening to the podcast. And I'm like, okay, this guy is like so positive and seems like he's really enjoying what he's doing. And then it was like so weird. I was just getting fed like David Roach content on Instagram. It was like, the interwebs were listening to me. And I don't know, signs were just pointing to like, hey, send this guy a DM and see if he's willing to chat. Like I've gotten so much better about like reaching out to people and just being like a nerd and asking questions and learning. And I purely just wanted to talk to him on the phone and like pick his brain a little bit. And then it turned out to be a great phone call. And I was like, hey, look, I do not like to be babysat. I don't like my handheld. I don't want to have to like text somebody every day to tell them how the run went or how I'm feeling. Like I'm pretty like the need for communication is like pretty low, but like I obviously want somebody who feels like they can invest in me and they're enjoying it and getting something out of the process too. So it turned out to be a really collaborative, fun experiment. And we've been working together since like November or December. And it's been going well. Like he's definitely speed focused, which I love. I will never like not incorporate speed work into my training. I love to rip some like fast 200s, 400s, hill sprints. And I'm low mileage. Like I don't creep above 75 or 80 miles for a marathon. And that's pretty weird. So I needed somebody that wasn't going to like push me beyond that. And he's been great. So we've been working together and, yeah, it's very collaborative. It's great. He's super positive and fun. And yeah, it's been good.
Talking about this weekend, how do you feel? And also greater context to this whole kind of indoor, outdoor marathon circuit. What was the thought process behind all these races?
Yeah, so the 5K was just like a big like, okay, I feel like I can run fast and get a PR. I was actually going to go out to Boston regardless and do a course tour for the marathon. And the only month I could really fit that in was February. And I'm like, of course, BU has track races every weekend. Like I can't not go there and not race. So just circumstantially, it made sense to race and line up. And I'm so glad I did. And then the half marathon road champs, I've never really run a half. I ran the Rock and Roll Phoenix half earlier this year, pacing a friend. And it was fun. But I feel like the distance is just like kind of a question mark. I've done the 20K so I've done enough to know enough about the distance, but I've never actually run a half. And I think it's a decent amount of time out from Boston where I wouldn't get in trouble with training and being too close to that race. And then the 10K, the 10K on the track, it's such a long time to run in circles. I'm trying to like refine my love for that event. I used to love it in college, at the Pac-12 championships. I loved the 10K. And then something happened where it's just like, oh my God, I just need to figure out how to make it fun. And I'm trying to work on that, but it's a good test and it's going to be so fast. I know it's stacked. Great international field. So I'll do the 10 on the track on the 29th of March in LA area and then Boston Marathon. So I used to be scared of racing. Like I did it so infrequently and every race had so much weight on it that I got scared to race. And I feel like now I'm just going to line up and use my races as like my 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 efforts. Like obviously races are always all out. So I just look at racing just like that. Like it's a huge test. Go all in, have fun with it. But that's kind of the mindset. And then, but obviously like Boston is the big goal for April 21st. So yeah, very excited.
How do you train for all these things in the midst of like a marathon block?
Great question. Yeah, I've kind of kept the long runs pretty long and high quality. I've kept the mileage a little bit more on the lower side, so I'm not sacrificing that speed. I think I did a little bit too much high mileage for New York where I just didn't have that gear left, which is a learning curve. But yeah, I think I do a lot of really fun workouts where I'm letting myself run fast. I'm doing, fast 200s. I did a few workouts that I haven't done probably since like my first stint as a pro in terms of like the intensity that, they required. I did like 3 or 4 by a mile at 5K pace, which is like averaging like 4:48. Like for me, that's,
Moving.
I haven't touched those paces in a while. Yeah, so I kind of did like an initial stint where I, stacked some strength early on in the build, and then I really honed in on the speed. And then the last few weeks have been, 22-mile long run, getting back into the longer stuff and strength stuff. And then I'll probably really try to couple like the 10K training and the marathon training, which I actually think go really well together for the second half of my block. And then, yeah, the last 2 weeks will be a taper. So I really have like 6 hard weeks left, which is nuts. I'm like, oh my God, this is going so fast.
Yeah. Is it just me or is this year like flying by?
It is. I feel like January was a forever long month. And then February feels like a blip. And now we're like, March is this weekend. Like, it's fun, but I'm like, oh my God, slow down. Slow down.
Yeah. What's your perspective on that? You say time slow down. Is it you just want to like savor the goodness of life? You are enjoying life a lot right now.
I'm enjoying
I
life
go through
a
periods.
lot.
Sometimes I want to rush and be like old and married and have kids. And sometimes I'm like, life is great. Like settle down.
I want it to slow down. Like so many things are happening. Like I'm helping plan our 15-year high school reunion in September. My grandma turns 90 in April. My niece turns a year old in April. I'm like, there's so many like just markers of time happening all at once. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I just get so many flashbacks. I have never really been a nostalgic person up until I was saying like, I just have so many days where I'm thinking back and like reminiscing. I'm not like living in the past, but I feel like, oh my God, I'm 33 and maybe it's, birthday season too. I had my birthday in like a few weeks ago. I totally thought I'd have kids by now and we're not really close to that. We're trying to figure all that out, but yeah, it's just crazy. Life is crazy, but we're enjoying where we're at. Like it's a wild ride, but we just say in this, at our dinner on the couch every night, we'll say like, there's so many nights where we're like, wow, we're going to look back on these few years and be like, why did we do this? How did we do this? And we're so glad that we did that. But we're living in it now. So it's hard to have that perspective, but Yeah, I'm kind of in the I hope time slows down phase of life, but I get why you're like, oh, can we speed it up? And there's a curiosity about what's next, in the next big
Sure.
chapter. But
I
enjoy where
mean,
you're at, Dominic.
I know I need to. I need to because life goes by fast, and
Spry
I
and
don't want to.
young.
Yeah, I don't want to get to
Spring out of
30 and be
bed.
like, I don't want to get to 30 and be like, oh, I rushed through those
Yeah.
wonderful years of my life. I think the thing that I struggle with, not to make this like a therapy session, but is
No,
like,
let it
I
out.
think I'm so excited for the future and about the things going on in my life that I don't fully appreciate what's going on in the moment. Like when I
Mm,
lived in Austin for a year, it was amazing, but like I was trying to turn the running effect into like a full-time thing. All my
yeah.
focus and energy was on that. And I would look back on that time and I'm like, the people I got to spend my time with, the things I got to do. Like I did
Right?
not appreciate it all in the moment. And actually, one of the best quotes I've ever seen in my entire life, came across it last year, was the good old days are nothing more than taking the present moment for granted. And I think I've
Mm,
done that far too much in my life. But also, I'm glad that I have a life that I like look forward to things. I think
yeah.
there's beauty within that.
Fortunate.
But I'm so nostalgic, by the way. My mom gets so annoyed at me. Like I will, when I was younger, like even like in high school, still living at their house, like I would have her keep like little things when I was a kid, like even
Oh,
specifically running things. I'd be like, I won my 8th grade city championship in these shorts, mom. You have to store them away in this like container
that's
and
cute.
like all those sort of stuff. So, but that's
No,
awesome. Yes,
enjoy where you're at. And I will say, your 30s are awesome. So you have that to look forward to. I think you just know so much more about yourself and what you want and what you don't want, which is almost just as important. Um, but no, it's always so fun. Like being at the indoor track race was so fun because I was around like the Stanford team and I was just observing them. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, oh, I wish I just sat in those moments a little bit longer. Like sitting with your teammates, like at a track meet and all just like giggling in a circle. And like, there's so many fun things that go on when you're at the stage in life that you're at, when you're in college, high school. So that's always my advice to like younger kids too, is like enjoy the small moments in between moments, like in the locker room and on the bus on the way to the track meet and all the goofy times. But yeah, there's more to come though when you're as you add more years to the age clock.
for sure.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think what excites me the most is I've grown so much in the past 2 years in just about every way. And I'm so excited to see the person that I'll be in like 2, 3 years and how much
Aw,
life I will have lived and like how things will have changed. So all good things. But I think it's like
I
it's
love
really
that.
exciting and cool to talk to people like you who are like constantly. I mean, if we talked 2 years ago and I was like, you're gonna place fourth at the Olympic trials, have a contract with Brooks, be child, like you'd be like, what in the world? And I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if like in 2 years from now I tell you that reality to this version of Jess, and you'd be like, oh
Mm,
my gosh, that's crazy. I wouldn't have expected that. And I think that's what makes life beautiful is that it's unpredictable. And sometimes that's what causes stress. But it
yeah.
also
Yep.
like to the bad days conversation before, we wouldn't have context for what a good day would be if we didn't have a bad day. And it's the same vein of like life wouldn't be
Yeah.
fun and exciting if it was like the same every single day. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so
Totally agree. Could not have
anyways, we're
said it
getting
better.
so unnecessarily deep at the end of the podcast,
No,
but
I love it.
spicing
You're
up people's runs. Jess, final question for you. If we did a podcast a year from now, what would we be celebrating?
oh my gosh. Okay, hopefully um a top 5 finish at a world major, either at Boston or a fall marathon. Um Hopefully a PR in the 10K. I feel like I owe myself that one. Um, and then just another year of getting to like December and being excited for another year of all of this. Like, I think that's a big thing for me. I haven't gotten to the end of a season or a year and I'm like, oh, thank God it's over. And I can just take like however long I need to recover and get like remotivated for what is like yet to come. Like I've basically finished each marathon excited for the next one and each season excited for the next one. And I just want to keep that rolling. And I hope I have a little bit more clarity on like, I mean, a few personal things, like just personally outside of running. But no, for the most part, yeah, just looking back and hopefully having a similar conversation of it was a great year, learned a lot again, applied what I learned last year to this year. So hopefully applying all the learnings from 2024 to 2025. And yeah, and then 2026 is not far off from 2028. So we're looking, I'm definitely excited for 2028, but I want to take each year for what it is, and you just enjoy the ride.
Jess, I'll let you go do your business and all the double or whatever you have to do. Sincerely appreciate you taking the time out of your busy life to talk with me, give so much wisdom to all those who will listen, and sincerely appreciate you and all that you are, both on and off the track. I sincerely mean this. And if you don't believe me, go listen to my other podcast. I don't really ever say this. Like, anyone who I've ever talked to about you has only good and positive things to say, and their face lights up and they're like, oh my gosh, you know Jess too, X, Y, and Z about Jess. So you're truly a person that's making an impact on and off the track. And I think for me, as someone who like covers the sport and stories within it, those are the stories I want to highlight of like, I don't care if you're Jakob Ingebrigtsen and running ridiculous times on the track. I care to an extent, but what matters more in this world is like who you are as a person and the impact you have and what happens in conversations that person isn't even in, as I just mentioned. So keep up the great work. You have a fan in me, and appreciate your time today.
Oh my gosh. Oh, thank you. Right back at you. I feel like you need to go on a podcast and share everything that you've learned to get to this point. And I've been following your like milestone tracking with your business, and it's so cool to see somebody who's so young but so wise at, you know, enjoying what they're doing. So people are learning from you, and keep it up. And everybody, you know, give the pod a follow and give it a listen. But no, thank you for having me, and have a good rest of your week. I appreciate it.